Hello guys, and welcome to the Phat Pack Magic Vintage Cube, where we've got some of the most powerful cards ever printed in Magic's history here to draft for you today. So, we've been following Anthony, and it looks like he's got a pretty decent startup going. Emrakul, Oracle of Moldiah, and Tropical Island is definitely a solid pick. Mother of Runes, ooh, and Stoneforge Mystic. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like there's going to be any power in this pack, which is always great for a pack 1 pick 1, but Stoneforge Mystic is incredibly solid as a pack 1 pick 1 pick, mainly because it can go in a very diverse set of archetypes. You can put it in your aggro deck, mid-range, control, not so much combo, and it looks like that's what Anthony is going to be opting for, a Stoneforge Mystic in his pack 1 pick 1, which is definitely awesome, mainly because you can start hitting equipment pretty early on, and Ancient Tomb looks really good here, but we have Narset. And Narset is a really good pick. It's a really good, strong early pick, mainly because you can get some of the Time Twister effects, like actual Time Twister, Time Spiral, Wheel of Fortune if he wants to go into the Jeskai build or blue-red. But Narset's really strong here, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of competition in this pack against it. Moloku, maybe the Spell Queller, but I do like the Narset here. The only other thing that I would take over it is maybe the Ancient Tomb, mainly because Ancient Tomb is a lot more open of a pick in your pack 1 pick 2, but Narset is just so strong in a format with so much draw power. Now here we've got a lot of just really strong aggro cards. Isamaru, Inspiring Vantage if he wants to hit into white-red. He's not fully committed into blue just yet, but there's a lot of reasons to go into blue. Specifically that Memory Lapse or that Fractured Identity. He's thinking on the Memory Lapse, but I think he's taking another, he's going to take another read at that Fractured Identity and pick that over the Memory Lapse. Maybe he could wheel it in blue-white. However, this is a 10-person pod, so a lot of your picks are going to be really important here. So he picks up the next pack and he's looking at Retrofitter Foundry. Now, this card is really interesting because it's very versatile. It goes great in the artifact deck if you're making Tolarian Academy mana, and you can just kind of infinitely untap it if you get to a decent area of critical mass with your artifacts. But there's a lot else going on in this pack as well. Duergar Hedge Mage, not so much for the control build, but definitely a more interesting pick, and a lot of these cards a lot of people just haven't seen before, especially if they're newer players, or players that haven't really been well versed in like the Commander formats where you'd see Retrofitter Foundry a bit more. But he's taking a look at the Fate's Fetters, which is an old school Ravnica card that wasn't changed before Planeswalkers came out. So you can play that on a Planeswalker and it basically just nukes it. And next pack, Sensei's Divining Top. That's a nice pickup. I don't know why he's in Wrath of God too. Now if he's going for a more controlling build, he definitely wants to pick up that Wrath of God as soon as possible. Board sweepers are really important for control decks to go for the aggro against aggro. But he's taking the Baleful Strix, which is straight card advantage. Puts him in Esper, or that's a wasted pick basically, but it's a great card against aggro decks because it just trades with anything and draws a card. The Flying Death Touch basically being a removal spell with draw a card on top of it. A lot of times, it's probably going to get chumped in some way or just hit on with a basic removal spell, but you're still drawing a card off of it. Now, Oblivion Ring, Swords of Plowshares, and Elspeth. And Cryptic Command. Oh man, I bet he just wishes he could take so much in this pack. The Cryptic Command is going to be definitely hard on his mana base because he hasn't picked up any fetches or any filter lands. So if he wants to kind of dip into Esper, that Cryptic Command is going to be really tough on him. The Swords of Plowshares, though, that's going to leave him open. It definitely doesn't hit as much as Cryptic Command. Doesn't get card draw as much as Cryptic Command, but it's a 1 mana spell that hits any creature. And I think that's really important in this format. Looking at Council's Judgment here and Karakas. Karakas is a really important card, mainly against the combo decks hitting off of Kiki Jiki or Reanimator that drops Iona or Grizzlebrand. Granted, if Grizzlebrand hits, them drawing 7 is going to be really hard on you, even if you do Karakas it back. But he's going to go with the Council's Judgment, which is incredibly power because it goes through any protection abilities. It basically cures what ails you. And that's an Anguished Unmaking. And white-black is in a tough place when it comes to powered cubes, mainly because it's a very fair deck. You mainly want Orzhov kind of splashes in for your Esper control deck, but that Anguished Unmaking is really strong, and I also am torn on that Brightling. The Brightling would be great as a finisher for Anthony, being able to block and lifelink and basically bounce it back if you need to, but I do support the Anguished Unmaking here, mainly because it's an instant, kills anything, non-land, and at the cost of 3 life, to be able to get a Planeswalker, and Planeswalkers are really powerful in this cube, so that's heavily important, especially because it's going to be able to hit multiple targets. Now, Nevernill's Disc here is pretty great, as well as the Oblivion Stone. Although I do like the Oblivion Stone, I think he needs a Wrath effect, but it looks like he's eyeing the Glint-Sleeve Siphoner, which is incredibly tough to say, by the way. And I'm okay with this, mainly because Glint-Sleeve is really strong, even in control decks, but it looks like he's going for a more mid-range kind of deck here, maybe with some heavy top end. Cast Down is a great card, mainly because of the amount of legendaries in this cube. There's not a ton of them, so Cast Down is pretty much kill any creature, but it looks like he's going for more of a finisher route with Sorin Grim Nemesis, which is going to be able to act as removal and card draw at the same time. You know, each turn either drawing a card and burning them with the CMC of your card, or being able to kill a creature of 6 or less toughness, and getting life off of that as well. The ultimate isn't as relevant, but here we are with the wheel and the Mother of Runes wheeled. Now, that tells me white aggro is super open, and maybe Anthony is seeing the same thing I am, and he's going to start trying to cut in for maybe white-black kind of aggro, or maybe he could go into white-red. But Mother of Runes is just a huge signal it being passed, and it wheeled. And Najeela wheeled as well. But Anthony is on the control route, taking Maloku, and here's Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, amazing mana fixing in those colors. Now here's a hate draft of Rhythm of the Wild, a card that he definitely doesn't want to play against, I'm sure, because Riot and +1/+1 counters are not good against his deck. So his last pick was Hypnotic Spectre, and we're rounding into pack 2. But I think a lot of his picks in pack 1 were released. Ooh, wow! So here is some power, Time Twister, and a fetch land on top of that, Time Spiral, wow, and a Lore Seeker. Now, Lore Seeker is definitely a gamble kind of card, and it's really hard because if you take it when you have power in your pack, do you take the power you have, or are you going to take the power you could get? And it looks like he's reading this card. Now, for those of you who don't know, when you draft Lore Seeker, it adds a pack to the draft. So you take that card, and then you draft another pack, and it just goes along with it. So we're going to see a kind of wonky set of picks here. Mainly, it's going to go from 15 picks to 17 picks, because everybody is going to get extra cards off this exchange. So let's see what Anthony can rip out. He passed a Time Twister and a Time Spiral. Definitely power. A very powerful pack. And let's see if it pays off for him. So he's got Mystical Tutor. That's a pretty okay thing. Nothing I would train Time Spiral for. Bayou, Misty. Oh, Mana Crypt. Oh, wow! So it did pay off for him in the form of Mox Jet. So Anthony was able to kind of mulligan his pack, and it definitely paid off. Mox Jet is a great pick, and not just any Mox, an on-color Mox. And he is going to get really rewarded for his pack 1 here, because Flooded Strand just turned up in the pack. Now, what's a shame is that he passed Time Spiral, Time Twister, and a Mana Crypt to his right. So the guy on his right is getting the hookup. But he takes Flooded Strand here, and a definite solid pick. He definitely needs some mana fixing if he's going into Esper. And basically, that's going to be one of the heaviest things that he's going to contend with. Now, he's looking at Tithe Taker and Sarah. I really like the Sarah here because Planeswalkers are incredibly powerful in cubes, mainly because of just the immediate value that you get, and then a pseudo resource based on them having to deal with the Planeswalker or hit the Planeswalker, either a fog and just resources in general. Because Sarah is going to be able to drop down, play a 4/4 that's going to be a 5/5 Vigilance hitting next turn, and the turn after that, make another 4/4 and cash her in, or just keep on going. But it looks like he's not on that plan. He's going to try and get that lower curve with Tithe Taker, which is definitely strong and going to be able to trade for the aggro decks. But it looks like he's got the Supreme Verdict pulled to the front, and there's a really late Tinker. And he is going all in on the Tinker plan, saying, you know what, let's see what else I can get. It's pretty early in pack 2, so he's got more room to wiggle with in pack 3 as well. And maybe, he can find something there. There wasn't too much that he was giving up on in that previous pack. And, wow, immediate payoff in the form of Mirror Battlesphere. So he's going to be able to turn 1, Island, Mox, some combination, and then turn 2, tinker that Mox away into a Mirror Battlesphere on turn 2. I mean, if he can get another Mox, he can do it on turn 1 and just outright decimate his opponent. He's got the Swords to Plowshares, so a lot of what his opponent's going to be able to do to deal with that Mirror Battlesphere is going to be in the later turns. And even if they deal with the Battlesphere, they've got 4 1/1 mirrors to contend with as well. He's going through his deck, and it's a lot of just really strong, good stuff here. I love this Esper build, kind of minoring into artifacts. I really wish he was able to get that Mana Crypt and accelerated mana a bit more and have more Tinker targets to kind of chump and sacrifice. But maybe he'll pull up a Mana Vault, or maybe get some good signets going on. Maybe, just maybe, a Tolarian Academy? Tolarian Academy with Mirror Battlesphere is incredibly nutso. Here we go into the next pack. And Go to Jail, which is fairly strong. It's a very underrated card. It's basically Swords to Plowshares with a very rare chance of them being able to get the creature back. And I think it's one of the stronger cards in the pack for what he's doing. Maybe the route. He definitely needs a board wipe, some kind of sweeper to be able to deal with the aggro decks, but it just doesn't seem like he's too worried about it. He's looking more into dealing with one solid, stable creature that might be able to get in the way of the Mirror Battlesphere, and just letting his other stuff go through. Now the other one is Malicious Affliction, which might be a little tough on his mana base with the double black, but being able to 2-for-1 your opponent is pretty strong. Now, this is my personal favorite card, Wind Reaver. It's not the most powerful, it's not the most busted card, but that's a card from my youth, and we all have our kind of hero cards. But Amanatu the Fate Shifter, that's a thing. And that's definitely a thing with that Mirror Battlesphere that he just got. Being able to flicker the Battlesphere and just get more mirror. More mirror is the key. And Anthony is on the mirror train. And you can also flicker your planeswalkers. But that is a really late scrub land. That is a very late scrub land. And that's essentially an auto pick scrub land. Maybe the unexpected absence, but you gotta take the scrub land. Especially because he's got a few fetches now. I would have taken the Fatal Push there or the Doomblade. But the Luminarch Ascension is great in a sideboard card against control mirror matches. Just being able to, start pumping out Angels consistently. And while control matchups are not as common in Cube as Control v Control, it's still a valid sideboard card. But I do think the Fatal Push might have been better there. However, Anthony has a lot of 1 CMC removal, so he might not be too worried about it. But look at his list so far. I mean, Lore Seeker into Mox Jet, and then he got the Flooded Strand from Mana Fixing, and Tinker. He is going to be able to do some absurd, disgusting things, just being able to tinker into the Battlesphere. The only sad thing is, if he draws the Battlesphere before he can get the Tinker online, it just becomes a dead card in his hand. And here we go. Angel of Sanctions, Gideon. Gideon is hella strong. And an Ash Barrens for just a little bit of extra mana fixing. But oh my god, that's a Kiki Jiki going pick 11 in pack 2. So there has been some just degenerate stuff going on in this draft because nobody picking up the Kiki Jiki, and Kiki Jiki is usually a pack 1 pick 1. It's definitely a first pickable kind of card. But he's going with Angel Sanctions and then taking the Tide Hollow Sculler. But I'm stuck on this Kiki Jiki. I mean, if somebody's trying to wheel the Kiki Jiki, that's insane. Holy crap. Wheeling Kiki Jiki, that is a ballsy move right there. I mean, that must mean that the Pestermite or the other one, the 1 blue and 2, 1/4, untap a creature. I don't remember the name right now, but either those two haven't been seen in the draft or they were picked super early. And Anthony is calling attention to himself for some reason. But back to this Kiki Jiki. Man, the pack was fine. I mean, there was Gideon, but what would you take over the Kiki Jiki? I mean, even just because hate drafting it might be the play, but I am stumped. But thankfully, I don't have to be stumped for long because here comes the next pack, and we've got Scion of Urza and Mystical Troubadour. Karn Scion of Urza and takes the Karn Scion pretty quick, which I can definitely see because he can make those tokens, sacrifice one of the tokens to the Kiki Jiki, to the Tinker, or make a token that's just going to be a big freaking token with the Mirror Battlesphere on field, or just start drawing cards with it. And here we go. Thalia Heretic Cathar. And red-white is super open. Look at that Tajik. And Anthony decides he would rather play against Thalia Heretic Cathar than Tajik, who's a 3/2 haster and going to give him a lot of trouble. And we've got Read from the Past, a very late Zergo. And wow! Red-white is super open. Whoever is drafting the aggro decks is getting just nuts picks right here. And that's the thing. Mono-color aggro decks are usually easy to pick up because they're not as exciting to draft. I mean, drafting Isamaru and Zergo and maybe like Lightning Helix and Lightning Bolts, yeah, sure, okay, yeah, whatever. But drafting Tinker and Blightsteel Colossus, even though that doesn't win, that's super exciting to play and to draft. And Fiendslayer Paladin with Rampaging Ferocidon as pick 16. And the last pick is History of Benalia. What the heck? I mean, History is incredibly powerful. It generates a lot of card advantage, just 2/2 Knights that eventually gets its own pump spell in 2 turns, basically. And, I mean, there are Knights in this cube that would benefit off of that pump. Wow. Oh, Skull Clamp. That's really good. Polluted Delta. Sword of Feast and Famine. Oh, wow. And there's Deceiver Exarch. Well, thankfully, Kiki-Jiki went the other way, so I don't think Anthony is going to be too afraid of passing that Deceiver Exarch. But Polluted Delta and Skull Clamp, I mean, if Anthony had drafted a more aggressive build with that Stoneforge Mystic, it would definitely be the Skull Clamp here, just because you're going to be able to get so much value, so much advantage off of your creatures and that Skull Clamp. But maybe the Celestial Colonnade, he definitely needs some more mana fixing if he's going into Esper. And that Polluted Delta might just get him what he needs. It's going to be able to get that Scrubland. It's going to be able to get, just blue-black in general. So that's what he's going to pick over the Celestial Colonnade. Maybe it'll wheel. And here we go. Another chance at a sweeper. And he definitely needs a Scarab God. And a Signet and a Watery Grave. I think the Watery Grave here, he definitely needs blue-black fixing a bit more. Being able to get a nice, good Shockland going is really important for his deck. And that's what he's going to pick. Now, Grave Titan is really good here. Thirst for Knowledge. Teferi Time Reveler is incredibly strong, shutting off so many strategies, and being able to bounce and draw and just basically cantrip himself. And if you get it more than once, you're ahead. And that's what he's going with Teferi Time Reveler. Barely any thought into what else he could pick. Nope, Teferi all the way, and I agree 100%. Teferi is so strong. It is making a huge impact in Standard, and let's see how it's going to impact in Cube. A 3-mana Planeswalker. It's a 3-mana Planeswalker. Those are normally amazing cards, and I think it's going to go great in his Esper control build. But Anthony does not have a lot of counter magic. He's mainly going to be trying to do board control and maybe eke out some advantage with that Mirror Battle Sphere. But, oh, and he got Amanatu in the previous one. So he can go Teferi, flicker to bounce a creature or whatever with Teferi, flicker Teferi with Amanatu, bounce again, draw 2 cards. Wow. Man, I mean, yeah, it's Magical Christmas Land, but this is a Magical Christmas Cube. Magical Hanukkah Cube. Magical holiday. It's a magical cube. That's what we're going with right now. It's the Phat Pack Magic Cube. But man, I'm really excited about these picks. Just solid Pack 3 picks that are definitely in his colors. Very open, very strong picks too. I'm thinking like maybe Anthony could have gone into the mono white splashing red for an aggro build, but there are just so many great tools being passed at his to his disposal. If only he would, I mean, that's such a tough pick. If he had lost his ass on that Lore Keeper and gotten a mediocre pack and traded the Time Spiral for it, he would be in a much more depressing position, to say the least. But he got to pull up a Mox Jet. And here we go to the next pack. And Cogwork Librarian, super solid pick. Even though it's late, it is just so solid because you can get so much stuff off of it. Advantage-wise, just being able to double pick is so strong. But he's going with Forbid. He definitely needs some kind of way to counterspell, and he's got a lot of card advantage. And a lot of people just write off Forbid as a cancel. But it is basically trading 2 jank cards for an additional counterspell. And your opponent, like if you have any kind of card advantage, or even like half card advantage, being able to nuke 2 of your opponent's super strong spells in Cube is so devastating. I mean, this card was amazing in Standard, and the buyback was discard 2 cards. Sure, they had Whispers of the Muse to go with it, but in this Cube, he's got so many ways to get card advantage with Teferi and maybe a Time Spiral wheel, maybe a, well, no, the Time Spiral is gone, but he can definitely make that buyback work. And Tezzeret the Seeker is a solid pick here, but he's going with Lingering Souls, which, funny enough, works really great with that Forbid, because being able to discard the Lingering Souls and getting to use the flashback on it is, that's just good value. So on the next pack, and Innocent Blood, and wow, land tax this late. Strip Mine, Creeping Tar Pit. I mean, you can get a really disgusting engine going there with the land tax and the Forbid, but I guess he's going more for the Creeping Tar Pit. Creeping Tar Pit just being amazing mana fixing and an easy finisher for his deck, and he needs some good ways to kind of just close out the game. Right now he's got Mirror Battlesphere, but he's looking at this next pack. Bomat Courier, Vraska's Contempt. There's a lot of just really good aggro that's not being picked up. That or somebody's drafting really well and wheeling the aggro for themselves. So he's taking Vraska's Contempt here, a solid pickup. Exiling a creature or a planeswalker is really relevant, and the life gain is pretty good against some of the aggressive decks. It might be a little slow, but Anthony has a lot of just early game removal to be able to build up to that Vraska's Contempt in turn 3, turn 4 if he's able to accelerate it all. So we're at pick 8, and here we got Spellseeker, which is fine, but I'm looking at that Dark Ritual. That's a really late, really big Dark Ritual. But it looks like he's going to go with the Spellseeker here. Now the question is if he has enough to really make it work. Spellseeker is an incredible card, definitely card advantage, but he needs a lot of 2 CMC or less. And there's one, Hymn to Torok. I mean, that's a pretty scary thing to pick up with your Spellseeker on turn 2 or turn 3 if you're able to accelerate it out. Vindicate in a Godless Shrine. So black-white is really open here. We're nearing the end of pack 3, but the Godless Shrine is really good. I like it. You can fetch with it, but he's taking another look around at what his mana base is going to be like. And he's got a lot of black fixing. He's got a lot of white fixing with Flooded Strand. That Urborg is going to turn everything into a swamp. And rather than the Godless Shrine, he's going to opt for the Vindicate to destroy any target permanent, which can be really relevant. Being able to hit lands is incredibly important in this cube sometimes. And, I mean, he's got the Anguish Unmaking, and now he's got the Vindicate to follow it up with. Sylvan Libraries and big, juicy artifacts, beware. Anthony is ready to rumble. Now, the only thing I think he might be missing is some good card advantage. He's got the Teferi, he's got Aminatou to kind of brainstorm a little bit, but I would love to see him get like a Thirst for Knowledge, or maybe a Preordain, or maybe a Ponder, or just something to kind of get an engine going for consistent card advantage. Maybe even a Phyrexian Arena. That would be really risky, but I think that's what his deck needs. But going through it, he's got a lot of just really solid Esper cards. And he's got the Sorin, which would also be able to draw him some cards really late though. But as a finisher planeswalker, and he reveals the Vindicate, which I love. I love Vindicate. I love the art on that card. I love the ability that it's definitely black-white. I mean, it's an old school card, and it's one that hasn't really fallen to the wayside in terms of power creep in recent years. Anguish Unmaking, yeah, it's instant speed, but being able to destroy a permanent, that's really important. And especially, I mean, look at that flavor text. Some convictions are so strong that the world must change to accommodate them. That is, I love flavor like that. And, looking at Anthony's deck, I think Vindicate is a great pick here. He's got a ton of removal. He just needs ways to close out the game. And we're at pick 10, and there's the wheel of Sword of Truth and Justice. He didn't get to wheel the Feast and Famine or the Skull Clamp, but Truth and Justice is fine. It's going to still be fetched with the Stoneforge Mystic, and he's got a fair amount of Planeswalkers that he can work with. And late pick Smuggler's Copter. Normally you want to play that in a sort of, reanimator build, just to kind of get a little bit of action going on. And the fact that it loots on attack rather than on damage is pretty important. But, I mean, it's a solid pick, maybe against other control decks. And here's Duragar Hedge Mage. Wow. I'm just looking at, all the white-red late picks. Anthony might have been able to go into a nice Jeskai build, or maybe even Mardu, but I think Teferi definitely warrants the blue in this build. So we're finishing off pack 3, pick 13, and his deck is looking really solid. Final 2 picks. Volrastra, is that a Plow Under? He passed a Plow Under, and he gets a late pick, Spawn of Mayhem, whatever. Who cares? Plow Under went pick 15. So that's it for us today at the Vintage Cube Draft. However, I want to know what you guys think. What would have been a better pack 1, pick 1 than the Stoneforge Mystic? Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. So until next time, may all your packs be fat.